In the 14th mind, i.e. märge dharmajnana, he develops two knowledges, present and future. 9. In the 16th mind, i.e. märge nvayajñāna, he develops two present knowledges, märge-jnana, knowledge of the path of the cessation of suffering, and nvayajñāna, and develops six future knowledges, dharmajnana, nvayajñāna, dukkhaجnana, samudayaجnana, nirvana, knowledge of the cessation of suffering, and märge-jnana. If he is detached, he develops seven knowledges by adding parasitaجnana, knowledge of another's mind, to the preceding six. b. In the brahmacarin. 10. The srotaāpanna who wishes to becomes detached from the fetters of kamada develops seven knowledges, excluding parasitaجnana, causality, knowledge of the cessation of the impurities, and anutpadaجnana, in the 17th mind. 11. In the 9th deliverance, when the saint becomes anagamin by destruction of the 9th category of passions of kamada, he develops four knowledges, excluding causality, knowledge of the cessation of the impurities, nad anutpadaجnana. When, by cessation of the 5th category of passions of kamada, the person inspired by faith becomes informed by possession of the view, he develops six knowledges in the twofold path, excluding parasitaجnana, samvartaجnana, causality, knowledge of the cessation of the impurities, and anutpadaجnana. 12. When the saint is detached from the passions belonging to seven stages, namely, the four dhyanas of rupadhatu, and the first three samapadhis of arupadhatu, the following should be distinguished. a. In the uninterrupted paths, he develops seven knowledges, excluding parasitaجnana, causality, knowledge of the cessation of the impurities, and anutpadaجnana. b. In the paths of deliverance, he develops eight knowledges, excluding causality, knowledge of the cessation of the impurities, and anutpadaجnana. 13. When the saint is detached from the passions of the summit of existence, the following should be distinguished. a. In the 9 uninterrupted paths in the first mind of the one who has nothing further to practice, a mind coinciding with the 9th and last deliverance of bhavagra. a. The arhat who is unconditionally liberated develops the 10 knowledges and all the impure and pure roots of good. b. The arhat who is conditionally liberated develops 9 knowledges excluding anutpadaجnana, and all the impure and pure roots of good. All of these distinctions are fully explained in the Apaitan Men. c. The 11 knowledges according to the Mahayana. 1. Knowledge conforming to reality. The knowledge conforming to reality has a special characteristic. It will be fully explained in the following chapters of the Prajnaparamita. 2. The 11 knowledges. Some say. 1. The knowledge of things cognizes the 5 aggregates of attachment as impermanent, painful, empty, and without self. It knows that dharmas are all the result of a complex of causes and conditions in the sense that actions have ignorance as condition and so on up to old age and death have birth as condition. Thus the Buddha said to the brahmacarin siu-che-mo. First, it is necessary to use the knowledge of the causality of things in order to analyze dharmas, then to use the knowledge concerning nirvana. 2. Subsequent knowledge. Knowing that the present 5 aggregates of attachment are impermanent, painful, empty and non-self. One deduces that, in the past and the future and in the form realm and the formless realm as well, the 5 aggregates of attachment are likewise impermanent, suffering, empty and without self. Thus, if we notice that presently fire warms and burns, we know by induction that fires past and future or fires in other places likewise warm and burn. 3. The knowledge of another's mind cognizes the mind and mental events of other beings. Question. If it cognizes the mind and mental events of others, Why is it called simply the knowledge of the mind of another and not the knowledge of the mind and mental events of others? Answer. The mind being sovereign, it is sufficient to call it the knowledge of another's mind. By saying mind, we know that the mental events are understood as well. 4. Conventional knowledge is a purely knowledge of designation. The saint knows that, in regard to reality, worldly people know it only verbally. This is why this knowledge is called knowledge of designation. In the same way, those for whom a house is just a word list of boards, posts, pillars, and walls only understand these materials and do not understand the real meaning of a house. That is conventional knowledge. 5. The knowledge of suffering brings into play a knowledge about suffering in order to reprimand the 5 aggregates of attachment. Question. The 5 aggregates of attachment are both impermanent, painful, empty, and non-self. Why speak only of the knowledge of suffering and not speak of a knowledge of impermanence, emptiness, and non-self? Answer. We speak of the knowledge of suffering in regard to the truth of suffering. The knowledge of the origin in regard to the truth of the origin, the knowledge of cessation in regard to the truth of cessation, and the knowledge of the path in regard to the truth of the path. Question. But the 5 aggregates of attachment have all kinds of evils. Why proclaim only one truth on suffering and not proclaim truths on impermanence, emptiness, and non-self as well? Answer. If truths on impermanence, emptiness, and non-self were proclaimed, this would not offend the meaning of the Buddhist doctrine. But as beings are, above all, lovers of happiness and enemies of suffering, the Buddhas lament that everything in the world is suffering was intended to lead beings to become detached from it. On the other hand, being faced with impermanence, emptiness, and non-self, beings are not very frightened. This is why the Buddha did not speak of them as distinct truths. Furthermore, in the Dharma proclaimed by the Buddha, the 5 aggregates of attachment carry different names, but all meaning suffering. This is why the Buddha spoke only of the knowledge of suffering. This dukkhañāna, knowledge of suffering, is sometimes impure, sometimes pure. A. It is impure in the preparatory path, when it is in heat, summits, patience, and supreme worldly dharmas. B. It is pure when the ascetic penetrates into the path of seeing the truths. Why is that? From there on up to the supreme worldly dharmas, the yogin considers suffering in 4 ways. 6 to 8, it is the same for the knowledge of the origin, the knowledge of cessation and the knowledge of the path. Furthermore, the knowledge of suffering cognizes that suffering nature.